I always believed the most terrifying moment of my life was the crash itself, the screech of tires on Redwood Parkway and the shattering glass. I was wrong. The true horror waited for me in the recovery room, where I learned that my parents had looked at my newborn daughter and simply said no. They abandoned us when we were broken, but they forgot one thing: my grandfather was watching, and he knew exactly where their skeletons were buried. The drive home felt like the first deep breath I had taken in 6 weeks. The dashboard clock glowed a soft green, telling me it was just past 8 in the evening, but my body felt like it was swimming through 3 in the morning. Beside me, the empty passenger seat was piled with a diaper bag, a breast pump case, and a stack of paperwork from the pediatrician. But the only thing that mattered was the rhythmic, soft sound coming from the back seat. My daughter was finally asleep. After weeks of colic, terrifying fevers, and the kind of sleep deprivation that makes the walls seem to vibrate, we had turned a corner. The pediatrician had smiled at me, actually smiled, and told me she was gaining weight perfectly. The latch issues were resolving. We were going to be okay. I remember gripping the steering wheel of my sedan, feeling the calluses on my fingers from washing bottles, and thinking that I could finally see the horizon. Evan was away on business, a necessary evil to keep our finances steady while I was on unpaid leave, but he would be back in 2 days. Just 48 hours. I could do 48 hours. I signaled to merge onto Redwood Parkway. The traffic was light, mostly commuters trying to get back to the suburbs of Westbridge before the rain started. I checked the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of the car seat base. She was secure. She was safe. I was a mother who was handling it. We were approaching the Briar Hollow overpass when the world ended. It did not happen like it does in the movies. There was no dramatic horn, no cinematic slow-motion realization. 1 second. I was thinking about whether I had enough frozen milk for the night feed. The next second, the headlights in the oncoming lane were not in their lane anymore. A delivery truck had jackknifed on the slick asphalt, sending a sedan careening across the median. I slammed on the brakes, my arm instinctively flying out to protect the empty passenger seat. A useless, primal gesture. The impact sounded like the earth cracking open. Metal screamed against metal, a sound so high and terrible it felt like it was piercing my teeth. My car spun, the horizon flipping sideways as we rolled. The airbag detonated in my face with the force of a prizefighter's hook, filling the cabin with white dust and the smell of burning chemicals. When the car finally stopped, it was upside down. Silence rushed back in, heavier than the noise. I was hanging by my seatbelt, the blood rushing to my head. My vision was swimming in red and black static. I tried to say her name. I tried to scream for my baby, but my lungs were flat, crushed against the steering column. I could not hear crying. That was the only thought that survived the concussion. I could not hear crying. Please, I thought, as the darkness clawed at the edges of my vision. Take me. Just let her be okay. Take me. Then the darkness won, and I went nowhere. I did not wake up for a long time, but while I lay intubated in the ICU of Riverside Memorial Medical Center, my life was being dismantled in a small, beige consultation room 2 floors down. I know what happened in that room as clearly as if I had been standing there. I have read the social worker's case notes. I have memorized the time-stamped security logs. I have heard the trembling retelling from my best friend, Marisol, and the stony, guilt-ridden admissions from the hospital staff. I have pieced together the timeline of my own betrayal, minute by agonizing minute. It started with a phone call. Tessa Wynn was the on-call social worker that night. She was young, barely 30, with a heart that had not yet been hardened by the sheer volume of tragedy that flows through a county hospital. When the paramedics brought me in, I was a Jane Doe for 12 minutes until they found my purse in the wreckage. My phone was smashed, but my wallet held my license and an emergency contact card I had laminated 3 weeks ago. Right after the birth, emergency contacts 1, Evan Price partner 2, Diane Nelson, mother 3, Robert Nelson, father. Evan was in the air, or just landing, or stuck in a dead zone. Tessa tried him twice and got voicemail. So, Following protocol. She dialed the next number. My mother answered on the second ring. Tessa explained the situation with professional calm. Leah Nelson had been in a severe accident. She was critical. She was heading into surgery to address internal bleeding and a potential splenic rupture, and most importantly, her newborn daughter was in the NICU. The baby was physically unharmed, a miracle of modern engineering and car seat safety, but she needed to be held for observation. And eventually, she would need to be discharged to a guardian while I recovered. You would expect panic. You would expect a scream, the sound of keys dropping, the frantic demand to know which hospital entrance to use. Instead, my mother asked if I was conscious. When Tessa told her no, Diane told her they would be there in 20 minutes. They arrived in 22. Diane and Robert Nelson walked into the Riverside Memorial waiting room, looking like they were arriving for a board meeting. Not a family crisis. My mother wore her camel hair coat, buttoned to the throat, her silver blonde hair immobile despite the wind outside. My father, Robert, was in his usual charcoal suit, his jaw set in that tight line that meant he was calculating the cost of something. Tessa met them by the nurse's station. She later wrote in her report that she felt a wave of relief when she saw them. They looked responsible. They looked wealthy. They looked like the kind of people who solved problems. In the chaotic ecosystem of a public hospital, a well-dressed older couple usually meant the system worked. Mr. and Mrs. Nelson, Tessa asked, extending a hand. I am Tessa Wynne. I spoke to you on the phone. Where is she? My father asked. He did not shake her hand. He was scanning the hallway, his eyes darting away from the gurneys and the frantic movement of the ER overflow. Leah is in surgery prep right now, Tessa said, guiding them toward a private family room. The trauma team is working on stabilizing her. She has a concussion and some abdominal injuries, but her vitals are holding, and the baby is upstairs in the NICU. She is doing just fine, a little shaken, but perfectly healthy. My mother sat down on the edge of the vinyl chair, keeping her coat on. She placed her handbag on her lap, clutching the strap with white-knuckled intensity. Who knows about this? Tessa blinked, confused. Excuse me. The accident, Diane said, her voice sharp and clear. Has it been reported? Were there news crews on the highway? I am not sure, Tessa said, her brow furrowing. Mrs. Nelson, right now our priority is Leah and the baby. I need to go over some paperwork with you regarding the baby's care. Since Leah is incapacitated and the father is out of town, we need to designate a temporary decision-maker for the infant. My father remained standing. He walked to the door, closed it firmly, and then turned back to Tessa. Evan is not the father on paper. They are not married. He is the father on the birth certificate, Tessa corrected gently. But he is not here, and until he arrives, we cannot release a newborn into a void. We need a family member to take responsibility for discharge planning. Should Leah remain unconscious for more than 24 hours? The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed, a low mechanical drone that usually fades into the background. But in that moment, it must have sounded like a roar. My mother looked at my father. It was a look I knew well. It was the look that passed between them when a waiter brought the wrong wine, or when a neighbor asked a question that was too personal. It was a communication of pure defensive strategy. We cannot do that, Robert said. Tessa paused, her pen hovering over the clipboard. I understand you are in shock. You do not have to take the baby home this second. We just need you to sign the authorization acknowledging that you are the next of kin and will assume temporary guardianship if Leah cannot. No, Diane said. She smoothed the fabric of her coat, avoiding Tessa's eyes. You do not understand. We cannot sign anything. We cannot take possession of the child. Tessa laughed nervously. It was a reflex. I am sorry. I must be explaining this poorly. I'm not asking you to adopt her. I am asking you to step in as grandparents because your daughter is in surgery. She needs to know her baby is with family. We are not the right people for this, Robert said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming authoritative. Leah has made her choices. She lives a certain way. We have maintained distance. If we sign those papers, we become liable. If something is wrong with the child, something the accident caused that you have not found yet, and we take her, that liability transfers to us." Tessa stared at them. She had worked in social services for 6 years. She had seen drug addicts weep because they could not keep their children. She had seen teenagers beg to stay with abusive parents because they loved them. She had never seen two affluent, sober, capable grandparents refuse to hold a pen because of liability. "Mr. Nelson," Tessa said, her voice hardening slightly, "this is not a business transaction. This is your granddaughter. She is alone in a plastic box upstairs. If you do not sign this, I cannot legally release her to you. And if I cannot release her to family, and the mother is unconscious, I am required by law to contact Child and Family Services." "Then you should do that," Diane said. She said it quickly, like she wanted to get the words out before she could choke on them, or perhaps she was not choking at all. "You want me to call the county?" Tessa asked, her shock finally breaking through her professional mask. "You want me to put your granddaughter into the foster system, even for a night, rather than you taking her home to your house in Cedar Glen?" "We are not equipped for an infant," Diane insisted, her voice rising in pitch. "We are in our 60s. We have obligations. Leah has a friend, Marisol. Call her. She seems to be involved in all of Leah's drama." "I cannot release a child to a non-relative without the mother's consent," Tessa snapped. "Leah is unconscious. You are the grandparents. You are here. This is the only way to keep the state out of this." Robert checked his watch. "We are not refusing to be supportive. We are refusing legal custody. There is a difference. We will wait here for news on Leah, but we will not sign for the child." Tessa stood up. She closed the clipboard with a snap that echoed off the linoleum walls. "Okay, I need to document this refusal. I need you to state clearly that you are declining to act as temporary guardians for your grandchild despite being present and capable." "Write what you want," Robert said, turning his back to her. "Just make sure the hospital knows we are not liable for the infant's medical bills." Tessa walked out of the room. She walked straight to the nurse's station, picked up the phone, and dialed the number for the Westbridge County Child Family Services Emergency Hotline. Upstairs, in the NICU. Brenda Holt was the nurse assigned to my daughter. Brenda was a grandmother herself. She had been rocking my baby, whispering soft nonsense to her, waiting for the grandparents to come up. She had prepped the discharge bag. She had warmed a bottle. When Tessa called the unit and told Brenda that the grandparents were downstairs but had refused to come up, Brenda reportedly put the phone down, walked into the break room, and sat in the dark for 2 minutes to compose herself. She later told me she looked at my daughter sleeping in that clear bassinet, wrapped in a hospital blanket, and felt a physical ache in her chest. "They did not even come to look at her," Brenda told me weeks later, her eyes wet. "They were in the building. Leah, they were right there, and they did not even come to look at her face. The machine of the state is slow, but once it starts, it is heavy." While the surgeons were stitching up a laceration on my spleen and monitoring the swelling in my brain, a caseworker named Nolan Pierce was being dispatched from his home. A file was opened. Case number 492-B, infant female Nelson, mother incapacitated, family refusal. My name was in the system. My daughter's name was in the system, because my parents did not want to risk their credit score or their schedule. We were now a case. But if my parents were the cold front moving in, Marisol King was the hurricane. Marisol arrived 40 minutes after my parents. She had heard about the crash from a friend who worked in the ER billing department. She ran into the waiting room wearing sweatpants and a mismatched hoodie, her hair in a chaotic bun, looking like she had sprinted from her car. She saw my parents sitting in the corner, looking at their phones. She did not stop to talk to them. She went straight to the desk. "I am here for Leah Nelson. I am her sister. Well, not blood, but I am her sister. Where is she?" Tessa Wynne intercepted her. "Are you Marisol?" "Yes. Is she alive? Is the baby okay? Marisol was shaking, her hands trembling so hard she had to clasp them together. They are both stable, Tessa said, guiding her away from the desk. But we have a problem. Leah is unconscious. We need a guardian for the baby. I will take her, Marisol said instantly. Give me the papers. I have a car seat in my garage. I will go get it. I have a crib. I helped Leah set hers up. I know exactly what she needs. Tessa looked at Marisol with a mixture of gratitude and pity. Marisol, I can't. You aren't family. Without Leah's consent, I can't release the baby to you. Not unless the next of kin signs a waiver designating you. Marisol froze. She turned her head slowly toward the corner of the waiting room where Diane and Robert were sitting. They had not looked up. They are right there, Marisol whispered. They refused, Tessa said quietly. They refused to sign for custody, and they refused to sign a waiver designating you. They said they do not want to be involved in the legal chain of custody. Marisol's face changed. The fear evaporated, replaced by a pure, white-hot rage. She walked over to my parents. Marisol is 5'2", but in that moment, she must have looked 10 feet tall. Diane, Marisol said. She did not shout. Her voice was deadly calm. My mother looked up, her face composing itself into a mask of polite tragedy. Hello, Marisol. It is a terrible night. Sign the paper, Marisol said. This is a family matter, Robert interjected, standing up to block her. We are handling the situation as we see fit. You are handling nothing, Marisol hissed. There is a baby upstairs who has no one. Evan is in Chicago. He is trying to rent a car because all the flights are grounded by the storm. He is driving through a blizzard right now to get here. You have to take her for one night, or sign the paper so I can— We are not signing legal documents under duress, Robert said, smoothing his tie. And we certainly are not handing an infant over to someone with your lack of stability. Marisol works 2 jobs. She has never missed a rent payment. She has been my rock since we were freshmen in college. My lack of stability, she repeated. You are letting your granddaughter go to foster care. It is merely a temporary placement with the county, Diane said, as if she were discussing storing a fur coat for the summer. It is the safest legal option until Evan returns. We are protecting the family from liability. Marisol looked at them, really looked at them, and realized there was no reasoning with the emptiness inside them. She turned back to Tessa. Let me stay with the baby. I won't take her. Just let me sit in the room so she is not alone. Tessa nodded. I can do that. You can be a visitor. So while my parents sat in the lobby worrying about their reputation, Marisol sat in a rocking chair in the NICU, holding my daughter's hand through the plastic port of the isolate, whispering to her that her daddy was coming, that her mommy was fighting, and that she was loved. It was nearly midnight when the atmosphere in the waiting room shifted. The automatic doors slid open, letting in a gust of cold, rain-soaked air. The night shift nurses looked up. My parents looked up. Harold Nelson walked in. My grandfather is 81 years old. He walks with a cane now, a polished piece of hickory that strikes the floor with a distinctive, heavy rhythm. Click, step, click, step. He was wearing a raincoat over his pajamas and a hastily thrown-on cardigan. He looked like a man who had been woken from a dead sleep by a phone call that changed everything. He did not look at the nurses. He did not look at the security guard. He walked straight toward my parents. Harold Nelson built the company that gave my father his wealth. He built the trust fund that paid for the house in Cedar Glen. He was a man who came from a time when a handshake was a contract and family was a fortress. He had softened in his old age, becoming the grandpa who slipped me $20 bills and asked about my garden. But that night, the softness was gone. Diane stood up, looking suddenly very small. Dad, we didn't want to worry you until we knew more. Harold ignored her. He stopped in front of them, leaning both hands on his cane. His breathing was heavy, audible in the quiet room. I spoke to the girl, Harold said. His voice was gravel. low and vibrating. "What girl?" Robert asked, stepping forward. "The nurse friend of Marisol's who called me," Harold said. "She told me that my great-granddaughter is being processed by the county because her grandparents are sitting in a lobby reading news alerts on their iPhones." "Dad, you do not understand the legal exposure," Robert started, using his courtroom voice. "If we take custody—" "Quiet," Harold said. It was not a shout. It was a command. It silenced the room. Harold reached into the deep pocket of his raincoat. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't an envelope yet, just a single sheet of yellow legal pad paper with hasty notes scribbled on it. He didn't hand it to them. He just held it. "I asked the social worker to show me the documentation," Harold said. "She told me you refused. You used the word liability." "We are just being prudent," Diane said, her voice trembling slightly. "Leah is in surgery. We don't know the outcome." Harold looked at his daughter, the woman he had raised. The woman he had sent to the best schools. The woman he had walked down the aisle. He looked at her with an expression that was more painful than anger. It was disappointment so deep it looked like grief. "Prudent," Harold repeated. He tasted the word like it was spoiled milk. He took a step closer to them. "I am going to go upstairs. I am going to sign whatever that woman puts in front of me. I am going to sit in that chair next to that baby until my joints lock up. You can't take care of a newborn." "Dad," Robert scoffed. "You're 81. "I am not going to take her home," Harold said. "I am going to ensure she stays here, with family. Until Evan gets here, I am going to be the grandfather you two forgot how to be." He turned to walk away, then stopped. He looked back at Robert and Diane, his eyes narrowing. The fury was there now, burning behind the calm facade. "And tomorrow," Harold said, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried across the room, "we are going to have a conversation about the trust, because I seem to recall that the funds I provide you are contingent on you maintaining the standing of this family. And tonight, you have not just embarrassed us, you have abandoned us." Robert's face went pale. The word trust hit him harder than the news of my crash had. "Dad, wait," Diane pleaded, reaching out. "It's complicated. There are things you don't know about Leah's situation." "I know she is in surgery," Harold said, turning his back on them. "And I know she is alone. That is all I need to know." He walked away, the click of his cane marking time like a metronome. He went to the desk, found Tessa Wynne, and asked for a pen. My parents stood in the waiting room, alone together. For the first time all night, they didn't look like the people in charge. They looked like people who had just realized that the ground beneath them was not solid rock, but thin ice, and they had just jumped, upstairs, in the dark. My heart monitor beeped a steady, stubborn rhythm. I was alive, and help had finally arrived. Waking up in the ICU was not a singular event. It was a series of drowning moments, fighting to break the surface, gasping for air, and then being pulled back down into the chemical dark. The first time I opened my eyes, everything was white. White lights, white ceiling tiles, white noise. My mouth tasted like copper and old cotton. I tried to lift my head, but it felt like it had been bolted to the pillow. A nurse was adjusting a bag of fluid on a pole next to me. I tried to ask about the car seat. I tried to say, "Is she okay?" But all that came out was a dry croak. The nurse shushed me, injected something into my IV, and the darkness took me again. The second time, the pain was there. It was a dull, throbbing heat in my side, radiating outward like a heavy stone had been sewn into my abdomen. I remembered the crash. I remembered the headlights. "My baby," I whispered. It hurt to speak. My throat was raw from the tube they had pulled out. "She is fine," a voice said. It was not the nurse. It was Marisol. I turned my head. The movement made the room spin. A sickening lurch that made me squeeze my eyes shut. When I opened them again, Marisol was there. She was wearing the same hoodie she had been wearing in my memory of yesterday, but her eyes were red-rimmed and shadowed. She was holding my hand so tight it almost hurt. Leah, she said. Leah, look at me. She is okay. She is in the NICU. She is perfect. Not a scratch on her. Where is Evan? I asked. My brain was firing slowly, like an engine turning over in 0-degree weather. He is coming, Marisol said. She squeezed my hand again. There is a storm. A big winter storm in the Midwest. His flight got grounded in Chicago. But he is renting a car. He is driving. He will be here. I nodded. The motion tiny. And my parents. Marisol hesitated. That hesitation was the first crack in the glass, in that split second of silence. The morphine haze cleared just enough for me to see the look on my best friend's face. It was a look of furious protection. It was the way she used to look at guys who tried to buy us drinks when we just wanted to dance. It was the look she wore when she had to tell me something that was going to break my heart. But she wanted to be the one to hold the pieces. They were here, Marisol said. She chose her words carefully, like she was walking through a minefield. Where are they? I asked. Are they with the baby? Marisol looked down at our joined hands. She took a deep breath. No, Leah, they are not with the baby. Why? I tried to sit up, but the pain in my side flared, pinning me back. Is something wrong with her? You said she was fine. She is fine, Marisol promised, leaning in close. Listen to me. The baby is safe, but there is complications with the paperwork. What paperwork? The hospital needed a family member to sign for temporary guardianship, Marisol said. Just for now. Just until Evan gets here or you wake up, because you were unconscious. They needed a legal next of kin to take responsibility for discharge planning. Okay, I said, confusion clouding my thoughts. So, my mom signed it. Marisol did not answer. Marisol, I said, did my mom sign it? No, she said softly. Then my dad did. No, Marisol said. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the tremor of rage underneath it. They refused. Leah, the word hung in the air. Suspended in the sterile hum of the machines, refused. It did not make sense. I knew my parents were difficult. I knew they were cold. But this was a baby. This was their blood. This was the child Diane had knitted a blanket for. The child Robert had politely asked about during our stiff, bi-weekly phone calls. What do you mean? Refused? I asked. Did they not understand? They understood. Marisol said, they were worried about liability. They were worried about being legally responsible if there were medical issues later. They told the social worker they were not equipped. I stared at the ceiling. A water stain in the corner looked like a map of a country that did not exist. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. It was the feeling of a door slamming shut, a door I had spent 33 years trying to keep open. So where is she? I asked. My voice sounded very small. If they didn't sign, who has her? The county, Marisol said. Technically, but don't panic. Tessa, the social worker, is amazing. She kept the case open so the baby could stay in the nursery here. She is not in a foster home. She is upstairs. But because your parents said no, they had to involve Child and Family Services. There is a caseworker named Nolan Pierce assigned to the file. A caseworker. A file. I closed my eyes, and hot tears leaked out, tracking into my hairline. I had done everything right. I had gone to college. I had built a career. I had bought a house. I had found a partner who loved me. I had tried so hard to build a life that was respectable, stable, and safe, precisely so I would never be a case. I wanted to prove to Diane and Robert Nelson that I was not the chaotic, emotional mess they always accused me of being. And now, because of them, my daughter was a case number before she was even 3 days old. I thought they would change, I whispered. Marisol smoothed the hair back from my forehead. I know, honey, I know. I thought, when they saw her, I choked out. I thought it would be different. It's them, Marisol said firmly. It is not you, and it is certainly not her. It is them. They are broken people. Leah. They just have expensive glue holding the pieces together. The hours that followed were a blur of medical checks and crushing reality. A doctor came in to explain my injuries: a grade 3 splenic laceration, a concussion, bruising that covered the entire left side of my body. I nodded at the right times, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about Cedar Glen Estates. I grew up in a house where the carpets were white and the silence was heavy. Diane and Robert were not the kind of parents who locked you in a closet or hit you. They were the kind of parents who sighed. They were the kind of parents who looked at a report card with 5 A's and 1 B and asked why I had not focused harder on the B. They were obsessed with the architecture of their lives, how things looked from the street, how things sounded at the country club, how things read in the Christmas newsletter. Love, in the Nelson household, was transactional. You received affection when you performed well. You received distance when you were messy. And a car accident. A daughter in the ICU. A newborn with no father present. That was messy. That was the definition of messy. By refusing to sign the papers, they were not just protecting their assets, they were rejecting the mess. They were stepping back to the curb so the mud wouldn't splash on their shoes. Sometime in the afternoon, my phone buzzed on the bedside table. Marisol had retrieved it from my personal effects bag. The screen was cracked. A spiderweb of glass over Evan's face. I hit the video call button. Leah. Evan's face filled the screen. He looked terrible. He was in a car. The interior dark. The windows lashed with rain and sleet. His eyes were wild with exhaustion. Oh my God. Leah, are you okay? Show me your face. Let me see you. I'm okay, I said, holding the phone with my good arm. I'm alive. I look worse than I feel. I am so sorry, he said, his voice cracking. I am so sorry I wasn't there. I should have been driving. I should have been in the car. No, I said instantly. No, if you had been in the car, who knows what would have happened. You're safe. That's what matters. I'm in Indiana, he said, rubbing his face. The interstate is a sheet of ice. I'm doing 30 miles an hour. I tried to get a flight out of Indianapolis, but everything is grounded until tomorrow morning. I'm just going to keep driving. I'll be there. Leah, I promise. I don't care if I have to drive through a tornado. Be careful, I told him. Please be careful. We can't lose you too. I talked to Marisol, Evan said, his expression darkening. She told me what your parents did. Yeah, I said. I didn't have the energy to analyze it with him yet. I am going to kill them, Evan said. He didn't say it like a threat. He said it like a fact. When I get there, I'm going to scream at them until the police come. Don't, I said. They aren't worth the energy. Evan, we just need to get the baby home. Just get here safe. We hung up, and the silence rushed back in. I felt a fresh wave of humiliation. I had brought this man into my family. I had told him that my parents were complicated but decent. I had defended them to him for 5 years, and now he was driving through a blizzard knowing that his partner's parents had left his daughter to the state because they didn't want to sign a liability waiver. A knock at the door broke my spiral. Tessa Wynne walked in. She looked tired. Her ID badge flipped backward on her lanyard. She pulled a chair up to the bedside. Hi. Leah, she said. I am Tessa. I am the social worker handling your daughter's case. Am I in trouble? I asked. It was a child's question, but I felt like a child. No, Tessa said firmly. Absolutely not. I want to be very clear about this. No one is accusing you of wrongdoing. The accident was not your fault. You were not under the influence. You had the baby properly restrained. You are a victim here. Leah. Then why is there a caseworker? Because of the gap, Tessa explained. Legal authority is a chain. When you became unconscious, the chain broke. Usually, a grandparent or a sibling picks up the link instantly because your parents declined. The chain fell to the ground. The county had to pick it up to ensure the baby had a legal guardian for medical decisions. It is purely about temporary legal authority. So she isn't being taken away. No, she is in the NICU. We are just holding her there until you are discharged or Evan arrives. But, she paused, because the file was opened, there will be a follow-up. Nolan Pierce, the county caseworker, will have to do a home visit eventually. It is just protocol. I nodded, feeling the hot shame burn my cheeks again. A home visit. Strangers looking in my fridge, checking my crib slats, judging my fitness to mother because my parents were cowards. I trailed off. Humiliated, Tessa guessed gently. Don't be. The NICU nurses, the doctors, me, we all see what is happening. We know who the problem is here, and it isn't you. The visit happened at 4 o'clock. I heard the heels clicking down the hallway before I saw her. My mother walked into the ICU room carrying a bag from an upscale baby boutique, the kind that wraps everything in tissue paper and silk ribbon. She looked impeccable. Her hair was fresh, her makeup precise. Robert trailed behind her, looking at the floor. "Leah," she said, her voice breathy with performed concern. She came to the side of the bed but did not touch me. "Oh, look at you. You poor thing." I looked at the bag in her hand. "What is that?" "I brought some things for the baby," she said, setting it on the tray table. "Some organic swaddles, a lovely little cashmere set, and some lotion for you." I stared at the bag. It was probably $300 worth of merchandise. "Did you sign the papers?" I asked. Diane stiffened. She adjusted the cuff of her coat. "Leah, don't start. We have had a very stressful 24 hours. "You have had a stressful 24 hours. I laughed, but it turned into a cough that rattled my bruised ribs. "I was in a car wreck. Mom, I was unconscious." "We know," Robert said from the foot of the bed. "And we were here. We waited for hours." "But you didn't help," I said. "Marisol told me. You refused to sign for her. We are not equipped for an infant." "Leah," Diane said, her voice taking on that sharp, defensive edge I knew so well. "Your father and I are 65 years old. We cannot be taking on legal guardianship of a newborn. What if she had needs? What if she required 24-hour care? We aren't nurses." "She is your granddaughter," I said. "She isn't a liability. She is a person." "You made your choices," Diane said. The phrase landed like a slap. "You chose to have a child with a man who travels for work. You chose to live 40 minutes away from us. You chose to drive at night. We cannot be expected to just clean up the consequences whenever things go wrong." "I didn't ask you to clean it up," I said, my voice shaking. "I asked you to hold her. I asked you to be her grandparents for one night." "We are here now," Robert said, trying to smooth the air with his hands. "We brought gifts. We are supportive, but we cannot sign legal documents that expose us to the county. It is a matter of principle." "Get out," I said. Diane looked shocked. "Leah, be reasonable." "Get out," I repeated. "Take your $300 blanket and get out of my room." Diane pursed her lips. She picked up her purse, but she left the gift bag. "You are emotional. It is the medication. We will come back when you are thinking clearly." She turned and walked out. Robert lingered for a second. He looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw guilt. But then his eyes shifted to the door where Marisol was standing guard. He walked over to Marisol in the hallway. I could see them through the open door. "Marisol," I heard him say. His voice was low, but the ICU was quiet. "A quick question." "What?" Marisol asked, her arms crossed. "Leah's accounts," Robert said. "Does Evan have access to them, the life insurance, the savings?" "Why are you asking that?" Marisol asked. "Just prudence," Robert said. "If Leah is incapacitated for a long time, someone needs to manage the mortgage, and I was wondering, has she changed her beneficiaries recently since the baby was born?" "You are unbelievable," Marisol said. "She is alive, Robert. She is right there." "And has she spoken to Harold?" Robert asked quickly. his eyes darting down the hall. "Has her grandfather been here today?" "Why does that matter?" "Just asking," Robert said. He adjusted his tie. "If he comes, tell him we were here. Tell him we brought gifts." He turned and followed my mother, walking fast, like he was being chased. My grandfather came back after dinner. The nurses had dimmed the lights. I was dozing, fighting the pain. When I felt a hand on my forehead, it was a rough hand, smelling of cedar and old paper. I opened my eyes. Harold was sitting in the chair Diane had vacated. He looked older than I had ever seen him. His face was gray, the lines around his eyes deep trenches of fatigue. "Hi, Grandpa," I whispered. "Hello, little bird," he said. It was his childhood nickname for me. "I heard you came last night," I said. "Marisol told me." "I was late," Harold said. His voice was thick with regret. "I was too late. If I had been here an hour earlier, none of this nonsense with the county would have happened. I would have signed the papers myself. I would have kidnapped the child if I had to." I smiled weakly. "They wouldn't do it, Grandpa. They were scared of the liability." Harold sighed. It was a long, rattling sound. He leaned back in the chair, resting his hands on the head of his cane. "Your mother and father are scared, Leah, but they are not scared of babies, and they are not scared of liability. Then what?" "They are scared of the truth," Harold said. He looked at me, his blue eyes sharp and clear. "They are scared that if they let anyone in, really let them in, the world will see that they are empty. They have spent 40 years building a fortress to hide the fact that there is no treasure inside, just dust." "They left her to the state," I said, the tears coming back. "I can't forgive that." "You shouldn't," Harold said. He leaned forward, gripping my hand. "Listen to me. Leah, I promise you this. That baby will not be handed to strangers. Not while I have breath in my body. And your parents are going to learn that actions have consequences. Real consequences, not just social ones." "What do you mean?" "I mean that I have let them play pretend for too long," Harold said. "I paid for the stage. I paid for the costumes. And I let them act out their little play of being the aristocrats of Cedar Glen. But the play is over." He stayed with me for an hour. He didn't talk much. He just sat there, a silent sentinel, letting me know that I wasn't an orphan, even if my parents made me feel like one. When he finally stood up to leave, he kissed my forehead. "Sleep, little bird. I will be back in the morning." He walked out into the hallway. I closed my eyes, trying to drift off, but a moment later, I heard voices. The door to my room was slightly ajar. My parents must have been lurking in the waiting room, waiting for Harold to leave. Or maybe they had come back to try to manage me again. "You cannot do that, Dad," I heard my mother hiss. It was a whisper shout, sharp and venomous. "I can do whatever I please, Diane," Harold's voice replied. It was calm, dangerously calm. "It is our money," Diane said. "We have lived our lives based on that expectation. You cannot just change the terms because we had a moment of hesitation." "A moment of hesitation," Harold's voice rose slightly. "You left your flesh and blood to the bureaucracy of the county because you didn't want to sign a form. You looked at a helpless child and saw a lawsuit." "We were protecting the family name," Robert interjected. "If something went wrong—" "You have destroyed the family name," Harold snapped. The sound of his cane hitting the floor echoed. "The Nelson name used to mean loyalty. You have turned it into a joke, a hollow, selfish joke." "Dad, please." Diane sounded desperate now. "Don't make a scene here." "Then you should have thought of that," Harold said, his voice dropping to a final, crushing weight. "Before you abandoned a child who did nothing wrong. Go home, Diane. Go home and look at your expensive furniture and your perfect lawn, because that is all you have left." I heard footsteps walking away, the heavy, rhythmic click step of the cane moving toward the elevators, and then silence. I lay in the dark, listening to the hum of the ICU, and for the first time since the crash. I didn't feel afraid. I felt something else. I felt the slow, turning grind of the wheel. My parents had made their choice, and now, thanks to Harold, they were going to have to live with it. The morning sun hit the windows of Riverside Memorial Medical Center with a brilliance that felt offensive. Inside room 412, the air was still thick with the smell of antiseptic and the low, rhythmic mechanical breathing of the equipment monitoring my vitals. I was awake, but barely. The pain medication created a soft, fuzzy distance between me and the world, but it could not dull the sharp edge of the anxiety that had taken residence in my chest. My grandfather, Harold Nelson, did not come to my room first. At 8 a.m, while the hospital was changing shifts and the corridors were cluttered with breakfast carts and sleepy residents, Harold walked into the administrative wing of the hospital. He did not walk like an 81-year-old retiree visiting a sick relative. He walked like he owned the building. He had requested a formal meeting with the patient advocate, the director of social work, and the attending physician overseeing my case. He had also, with the specific intent of a man laying a trap, requested that Diane and Robert Nelson be present. I learned the details of this meeting later from Tessa Wynne, who told me she had never seen a family dynamic shift so violently in the span of 30 minutes. They gathered in a small conference room on the second floor. The table was oval, covered in a fake cherry wood laminate. Tessa sat at one end with her notebook. Nolan Pierce, the caseworker from Child and Family Services who had been assigned to my daughter's file, sat next to her. He was a tired-looking man with kind eyes and a frayed collar, the kind of public servant who has seen too much but refuses to stop caring. My parents arrived 5 minutes late. Diane swept in, wearing a fresh blouse and holding a cup of coffee from the lobby kiosk. She offered a tight, pained smile to the room. Robert followed, his posture defensive, his eyes scanning the table as if looking for a contract to critique. "Thank you for meeting with us," Diane said, taking a seat. "We just want to ensure that Leah is receiving the best care and that this misunderstanding regarding the baby is cleared up." "It is not a misunderstanding," Harold said. He was sitting at the head of the table. He had not touched his water. In front of him, placed with geometric precision, was a leather folder and a heavy brass notary stamp. "Dad," Robert said, his voice warning, "we are here to discuss medical discharge planning. We are here to discuss why the county has a file on my great-granddaughter," Harold corrected. His voice was low, lacking any inflection. It was the voice he used to use when he was closing a division of his company. "Mr. Pierce, could you please clarify for my daughter and son-in-law the current legal status of the infant?" Nolan Pierce cleared his throat. He looked uncomfortable, sensing the voltage in the room. "Well, Mr. Nelson, currently, the child is under a temporary protective hold because the mother is incapacitated and the grandparents declined to sign the kinship placement forms. We are technically the guardians of record until the mother regains capacity or the father arrives." "Declined is a strong word," Diane interrupted, smoothing her hair. "We simply paused. We needed to assess the liability." "You refused," Harold said. He opened the leather folder. Inside was a single, thick envelope. It was yellowed slightly at the edges, sealed with red wax and old-fashioned affectation that Harold had always favored for important documents. "7 years ago," Harold said, addressing the room but looking only at my parents, "I updated the terms of the Nelson Family Giving Trust. I added a clause, a contingency clause." Robert stiffened. "Dad, this is hardly the place to discuss estate planning." "It is exactly the place," Harold said, "because I wrote a letter to accompany that clause. I sealed it, had it notarized, and placed it in my safe deposit box. The instructions on the outside of the envelope are very specific. They say, to be opened only if Diane and Robert Nelson ever attempt to punish Leah through isolation or abandonment." The room went silent. The hum of the ventilation system seemed to get louder. Diane stared at the envelope. Her face, usually flushed with a carefully applied bronzer, went the color of ash. She knew what was in that letter. Or rather, she knew the secrets that Harold held, and the terror of them being written down was enough to stop her heart. "I retrieved this from the bank this morning," Harold continued, tapping the wax seal with his index finger. "I have not opened it yet. I have not shown it to Mr. Pierce or the hospital administration. But I want you to know that it is here, and if you continue to prioritize your reputation over the safety of that child, I will open it, and I will read it into the public record." "You wouldn't," Diane whispered. It was a sound of pure fear. "Try me," Harold said. He did not shout. He did not bang the table. He simply let the threat hang there, heavy and suffocating. He picked up the notary stamp and set it down with a heavy thud. A judge hitting a gavel. "Now," Harold said, turning to Nolan Pierce, "let us discuss the immediate plan for the child." While Harold was dismantling my parents' defenses in the conference room, I was learning just how far their betrayal reached. Marisol was sitting by my bed, scrolling through her phone. She had been there all night, sleeping in the uncomfortable recliner, waking up every hour to check on me. She looked exhausted, but her thumb was moving across the screen with aggressive speed. "You need to stop looking at screens," I murmured, my voice raspy. "You're going to get a migraine." "I already have a migraine," Marisol said without looking up, "and it is named Diane Nelson." "What did she do now?" Marisol hesitated. She put the phone down on the blanket and looked at me. Her expression was a mix of pity and fury. "Leah, I need to tell you something, and I need you to promise not to spike your blood pressure because the nurses will yell at me. Tell me." "I have a friend who works in the office at Cedar Glen Community Church," Marisol said. "Sarah, you know her. She does the bulletin." "Yeah," I said. "My mom chairs the flower committee there." "Right. Well, Sarah texted me. Apparently, your mother called the church office yesterday morning, about 2 hours after the accident." I felt a flicker of hope. "Did she ask for prayers for the baby?" Marisol shook her head slowly. "No, Leah. She called to speak to the senior pastor. She wanted to know if the church had a crisis management fund or a contact for legal PR. What? She told the pastor that there might be a misunderstanding involving the county and her family, and she wanted to get ahead of the gossip," Marisol said. "She wasn't asking for help for the baby. She was asking for help to spin the story. She wanted to know if they could keep it off the prayer chain so people wouldn't ask why child services was involved." I closed my eyes. The pain in my side was a dull throb, but this new pain was sharp and centered in my chest. "She called the church to manage her reputation," I whispered. "My daughter is lying alone in a plastic box in the NICU, and she is calling the pastor to make sure no one thinks she is a bad grandmother. She is terrified of what people will think," Marisol said. "That is her God, Leah, the opinion of the Cedar Glen Estates Homeowners Association." "I hate them," I said. It was the first time I had ever said it out loud. I had said I was angry at them, I had said I was disappointed, but I had never said I hated them. "I actually hate them." "Good," Marisol said fiercely. "Use that. Hate is fuel. You need fuel right now." An hour later, the door to my room opened. Nolan Pierce walked in, followed by Harold, Diane, and Robert. The energy in the room was strange. Harold looked like a general who had just won a battle but lost the war. Diane looked shaken, her eyes darting around the room, refusing to land on me. Robert looked angry. His jaw clenched so tight a muscle was jumping in his cheek. "Hello, Leah," Nolan said gently. "I wanted to update you on the plan." "Is Evan here?" I asked, looking past him to the door. "Not yet," Nolan said. "But we have a proposal. Since you are alert but still physically unable to care for the infant, and since the father is delayed, we need a placement for the next 24 to 48 hours. "I will take her," Marisol said from the corner. "I have everything ready." "That is what we are proposing," Nolan said. "A kinship placement with a non-relative. Marisol King is listed as a close friend. She has a safe home environment, We can sign a temporary safety plan that releases the infant to Marisol until Evan arrives. No, Diane said. The word was sharp, like a glass breaking. Excuse me. Marisol stepped forward. We do not agree to that, Diane said. She was standing by the window, her arms crossed over her chest. She looked pale, but her voice was steady. We do not want the child released to an outsider. I am not an outsider. Diane, Marisol snapped. I am Leah's family, more than you are right now. You are not legal family, Robert interjected. And we have concerns. If the baby goes to Marisol, who is liable? Who makes the medical decisions? What if something happens at her apartment? We just want to keep the circle contained, Diane said. We don't want strangers involved in the legal side of this. I stared at my mother. I tried to see the woman who had taught me to tie my shoes. I tried to see the woman who had made me soup when I had the flu, but all I saw was a terrified, selfish creature who was trying to control a situation she had already broken. So you won't take her, I said, my voice rising. But you won't let Marisol take her either. We think she should stay in the hospital, Robert said. In the nursery, where it is safe, until Evan gets here. There is no need to involve third parties. She is a baby, I screamed. The force of it tore at my stitches, and I gasped, clutching my side. The monitor beeped faster. She needs to be held. She needs to be in a home. You want her to stay in a hospital crib for 2 more days, just because you don't like Marisol. We are acting on the advice of counsel, Robert muttered. Counsel. Harold turned on him. You called a lawyer. I am protecting my interests, Robert shouted back. And Leah's interests, if we sign over custody to Marisol. It sets a precedent. Get out, Harold said. Dad. I said get out, Harold roared. He pointed his cane at the door. Both of you, out into the hall, now. Diane and Robert retreated, looking like scolded children. Harold followed them, closing the door behind him. But the walls of the hospital were thin, and the anger in his voice carried through the wood. I know what you're doing, I heard Harold say. His voice was muffled but distinct. You are stalling. You are trying to keep the baby in the system because you think it gives you leverage. That is absurd, Robert's voice. Is it? Harold asked. If she goes to Marisol, the crisis is over. If she stays in the hospital, Leah is distressed. Leah is vulnerable. And you think, if she is vulnerable, she will sign whatever you put in front of her to make it stop. We are trying to help her, Diane cried. If you continue this, Harold said, and his voice dropped to a register that chilled my blood. I will make choices that cannot be reversed. I will strip the trust. I will foreclose on the house. I will leave you with nothing but your pride. Do you understand me? There was silence in the hallway. Then the sound of footsteps walking away fast. Harold came back into the room a moment later. He looked tired. The fire that had propelled him through the morning was starting to fade, replaced by the heavy weight of reality. He sat down heavily in the chair. I am sorry. Leah, he said. What did you tell them? I asked. In the meeting. With the letter. Harold sighed. He rubbed his eyes with his thumb and forefinger. I told them that I know who they are, and I told them that I have proof. Proof of what? Of who they used to be, Harold said enigmatically. Before they started living like they were being watched, before the money became more important than the blood. He wouldn't say more. He just patted my hand. Rest. Leah, I am going to go sit with the baby. I will make sure the nurses know to call me if your parents try to get into the NICU. Thank you. Grandpa? Don't thank me yet, he said grimly. We aren't done. The afternoon dragged on. The storm outside had intensified, lashing the windows with sleet every hour. I checked my phone, hoping for a miracle from Evan. At 4 o'clock, the miracle failed. Evan's face appeared on the screen, pixelated and freezing. He was in a hotel lobby. I'm stuck, he said, his voice breaking. Leah, I'm so sorry. The highway is closed. They shut down I-65. There was a pileup. I can't get through. It's okay, I lied. It's okay, Evan. You're safe. That's what matters. I'm not there, he said. I'm sitting in a Holiday Inn while you're in the hospital, and our daughter is… God, Leah, I feel useless. You aren't useless. You're trying. I talked to the airline. The earliest flight is tomorrow morning at 6. I'll be there by 9. I swear. We can wait, I said. We're okay. But as we hung up, the anxiety spiked in my chest like a physical blow. Another night of my baby in the nursery. Another night of my parents circling like sharks. I looked at Marisol. He's not coming tonight, Marisol swore softly. Okay, we handle it. I'll stay here. I'm not leaving. Why are they doing this? I asked. Why block you? Why keep her in the hospital? Because control is a drug. Marisol said, and they are addicts. Downstairs, in the hospital cafeteria, Robert Nelson was not eating. He was sitting in a booth in the back corner, away from the windows. He had a cup of coffee that had gone cold. Across from him sat a young man in a sharp suit, holding a tablet. He was an associate from Kestrel and Howe Legal Group. I did not see this meeting, obviously, but I know it happened because the billing records for Kestrel and Howe are thorough, and my father is a man who keeps receipts. The situation is complex, Robert was saying, leaning in. My daughter is incapacitated. She has a concussion. She is on narcotics for the pain. Understood, the lawyer said, tapping on the tablet. And the father, Robert continued, is not her husband. They are domestic partners. He is currently out of the state. Also understood. My question is about guardianship, Robert said. If the grandparents were to file for emergency temporary custody, arguing that the mother is unfit due to trauma and the father is absent, could we override the mother's preference for a non-relative? The lawyer frowned. You want to override the friend? We want to ensure the child is with family, Robert corrected. And we want to ensure that the financial assets, the trust funds that the child is entitled to, are managed by competent parties. If Leah is compromised, we need to know if we can step in, legally. It is a high bar, the lawyer warned. You would have to prove that the mother's judgment is impaired, not just that she is injured, but that her decision to place the child with the friend puts the child at risk. She is on morphine, Robert said. She is emotional. She just yelled at us in front of social services. That helps, the lawyer noted. But it's risky. If you file, it becomes a court battle. We don't want a battle, Robert said. We want a solution. We want to be the ones in charge. If we are in charge, we can control the narrative. We can keep Harold from doing anything rash. I can draft the motion, the lawyer said. But you need to be sure. Just draft it, Robert said. I want to have it ready. The sun went down, and the hospital settled into its night rhythm. The hallway lights dimmed. The nurses spoke in hushed tones. I was drifting in and out of sleep, exhaustion finally winning over the pain. Marisol had gone to the cafeteria to get food. I was alone in the room. My phone buzzed. I reached for it, wincing as the movement pulled at my stitches. It was a notification. An email. I blinked, trying to focus. It was from my father. The subject line was FW, draft motion. Review immediately. I frowned. My father never emailed me. He texted, or he called. I opened it. The body of the email was brief, addressed to Diane. Diane, see the attached draft from the Kestrel associate. It looks solid. If Leah signs nothing until she's discharged, we can still fix this. We just need to keep the baby in the hospital tonight. If Evan isn't here by morning, we file the emergency motion claiming abandonment and medical incapacity. Once we have temporary custody, Harold can't touch the trust without suing us, and he won't do that publicly. Stay strong. We are doing this for her own good. Robert, my blood ran cold. He had meant to send it to my mother. He had hit my name instead. Leah and Diane were next to each other in his contacts if he sorted by last name. Or maybe he was just panicked. I read it again. If Leah signs nothing, we can still fix this. File the emergency motion claiming abandonment. They weren't just refusing to help. They were actively plotting to take my daughter. They were using my accident, my pain, and Evan's absence to build a case that I was unfit, so they could seize custody and block Harold from cutting them off. They wanted the baby not because they loved her, but because she was the key to the money. She was the shield against Harold's letter. I felt a scream building in my throat, a primal, terrified sound. I pressed the call button for the nurse. I pressed it again and again. "Marisol," I screamed. "Marisol." The door flew open. Marisol ran in, dropping a sandwich on the floor. What is it? Are you bleeding?" "Look," I gasped, shoving the phone at her. "Look at what they are doing." Marisol took the phone. She read the email. Her eyes went wide. She read it again. "Oh my God," she whispered. "They are trying to steal her. They are going to file in the morning." I was sobbing now, the monitor beeping frantically as my heart rate spiked. "They are going to say I abandoned her. They are going to take her." "No," Marisol said. She looked up, and her face was terrifying. "No, they are not." She handed the phone back to me. "Call Harold," Marisol commanded. "Call him right now, and tell him to bring the letter." "The letter. The letter." Marisol said, "The nuclear option, if they want a war. Leah, we are going to give them a war." I dialed my grandfather's number. My hand was shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. It rang once. "Leah." Harold's voice was sleep-rough, but alert. "Is everything all right?" "They are trying to take her. Grandpa," I cried. "Dad sent an email. They are filing for custody in the morning. They are going to say I am unfit." There was a silence on the other end of the line, a silence that felt like the air before a lightning strike. "Did he put that in writing?" Harold asked. His voice was ice. "Yes, he forwarded it to me by accident." "Good," Harold said. "That is the mistake that ends them. What do I do?" "You do nothing," Harold said. "You rest, you heal. I am coming to the hospital, and I am bringing the notary stamp." "Grandpa, what are you going to do?" "I am going to do what I should have done 20 years ago," Harold said. "I am going to stop protecting them." The line went dead. I looked at Marisol. She was standing by the door, her arms crossed, looking like a soldier guarding the gate. "They messed with the wrong mother," Marisol said. "And the wrong grandfather," I whispered. Outside, the wind howled against the glass. But the storm inside the room was far more dangerous. My parents had made their move. They had tried to turn my tragedy into their strategy, but they had forgotten one thing. They had forgotten that I was a Nelson, too. And I was done being afraid. The dawn broke over Westbridge like a bruise, purple and gray and swollen with rain. From my hospital window, I could see the water streaking against the glass, distorting the world outside into a messy watercolor. But inside room 412, everything was becoming crystalline. The email my father had accidentally forwarded to me, the one outlining a plan to declare me unfit and seize custody, burned in my mind like a fever. I was done crying. Sadness is a luxury for people who are safe. I was not safe. I was hunted, at 7 a.m, when the phlebotomist came to draw my blood. I asked for the charge nurse. When the charge nurse arrived, I asked for the hospital administrator. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I spoke with the terrifying clarity of a woman who realizes that the people who raised her are not her parents, but her adversaries. "I need a HIPAA restriction form," I told the administrator. A woman named Mrs. Galloway, who smelled of vanilla hand sanitizer. "And I need to update my authorization for release of information." "Of course, Ms. Nelson," she said, tapping on her tablet. "Do you want to add someone?" "I want to remove everyone," I said. "Diane Nelson. Robert Nelson. Remove them. They are to have zero access to my medical records, my location, or my condition. If they call the nurses' station, I want them told that no information is available. If they try to enter this floor, I want security called." Mrs. Galloway paused, her finger hovering over the screen. She looked at me over the rim of her glasses. She had seen family dramas before, but the total excommunication of parents usually involved screaming. My coldness unsettled her. "Are you sure?" she asked. "This means they cannot even speak to your doctor." "I am sure," I said. "And I need to sign a limited power of attorney for healthcare decisions regarding my daughter. I want Marisol King named as the temporary decision-maker for all discharge planning and medical consent until Evan Price arrives." "We can do that," she said softly. "I will get the notary." Signing those papers felt like cutting the umbilical cord for the second time. The first time, the doctor had done it with surgical scissors, separating me from my daughter so she could live. This time, I was doing it with a ballpoint pen, separating myself from my parents so I could survive. When I handed the clipboard back, I felt a weight lift off my chest, replaced by a steel plate. I looked at Marisol, who was sitting in the corner eating a stale bagel. "It is done," I said. "Good," Marisol said. She wiped a crumb from her lip. "Now we wait for the cavalry." The cavalry was currently stuck in a snowdrift outside of Indianapolis. Harold had taken over the logistics of getting Evan home. My grandfather was not a man who understood technology, but he understood networks. He had spent 40 years running a manufacturing empire. He knew that if you could not move a product by air, you moved it by ground, and if you could not move it by ground, you found someone who knew the back roads. He sat by my bed, his cane resting against his knee, his phone pressed to his ear. "I do not care about the interstate closures," Harold barked into the phone. "I am looking at the Northline Systems logistics map. You have a distribution center in Dayton. You have trucks moving south." He listened for a moment. His eyes narrowed. "Yes, I know it is irregular," Harold said. "That is why I am calling you. George, I am asking for a favor. I need a driver who knows how to handle ice. I have a young man stranded at a Holiday Inn off exit 94. He needs to get to Riverside Memorial in Westbridge. Today," he paused again. "Yes, I will cover the liability. Put him in a cab to the distribution hub. Have one of your long-haul boys bring him down. He can ride in the cab. I don't care if he has to sit on a pallet of microchips. Just get him here." Harold hung up the phone with a sharp click. He looked at me and winked. "Evan is catching a ride with a Northline supply truck," Harold said. "They have chains on the tires and weight in the back. He will be moving in an hour." "Thank you, Grandpa," I whispered. My anxiety was a constant hum in my veins. I feel like if he isn't here, they are going to win." "They are not going to win," Harold said firmly. "But the clock is ticking. Your father's email suggests they are planning to file their motion tomorrow morning. They are counting on you being alone and overwhelmed." "I am not alone," I said. "No," Harold agreed. "You are not, but until Evan walks through those doors, you are vulnerable. The law favors biological parents, but it also favors presence. Diane and Robert are here. Evan is not. That is the leverage they are trying to use." I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 9 in the morning, a 20-hour drive in a storm. It was going to be the longest day of my life. At 10 o'clock, Nolan Pierce knocked on the door. The CFS caseworker looked even more rumpled than he had the day before. He held a manila folder, the physical manifestation of my nightmare. "Good morning, Leah," Nolan said. He pulled up a chair. "I wanted to update you on the documentation. Is she okay?" I asked immediately. "The baby—" "She is doing great," Nolan said, a genuine smile breaking through his fatigue. "The nurses say she is eating like a champion. She has your chin." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I hadn't even seen her chin properly yet. I had held her for 10 seconds before the crash, and then I had seen photos on Marisol's phone. "I signed the papers naming Marisol," I said. "Did Mrs. Galloway give them to you?" "She did," Nolan said. "That helps. It gives us a clear directive from you, but I need to talk to you about the refusal." "Okay. I have filed the incident report regarding your parents' decision on the night of the accident, Nolan said. He opened the folder. I want you to understand what this means. It is not a criminal charge. Negligence implies they had custody and failed. They never took custody, so legally, they did not break a law. So they get away with it, I said bitterly. Not exactly, Nolan said. He tapped the paper. This goes into the state database. It is a permanent record of a refusal to assume kinship care. It means that if they ever try to foster, adopt, or claim guardianship of a child in the future, this will flag. It also means that in any family court dispute like the one they might be planning, this document exists as evidence that when the child was most vulnerable, they declined to act. Does my mother know that? I believe she suspects it, Nolan said. She caught me in the hallway earlier. She was very agitated. She kept asking if the file was sealed or public. She wasn't asking about the baby's welfare. She was asking about the Freedom of Information Act. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. Of course she was. Diane Nelson didn't fear God. She feared the public record. She is terrified someone will find out, I said. She thinks if there is a piece of paper in a government basement somewhere that says she is a bad grandmother, it will somehow leak to the country club. It creates a paper trail, Nolan confirmed. And for people who live their lives trying to leave no footprints, a paper trail is a terrifying thing. It gives you power. Leah, the truth is written down now. They can't gaslight the state of Ohio. My father came to see me at noon. He was stopped at the nurse's station first. I could hear the argument from my room. He was trying to use his "I am a wealthy man in a suit" voice, and the head nurse, a formidable woman named Barb, was using her "I have been a nurse for 30 years and I do not care" voice. I am her father, Robert was saying. I demand to see her chart. You are not on the list, Mr. Nelson, Barb replied. You have been removed. You have no access. That is ridiculous. She is confused. She has a head injury. She is perfectly lucid, Barb said, and she has the right to privacy. You can go in and say hello if she allows it, but you are not seeing a single page of her medical file. I signaled to Marisol. Let him in, Marisol frowned. Are you sure the email? I need to look him in the eye, I said. I need to know. Marisol opened the door, and Robert walked in. He looked flushed, his tie slightly askew. He was carrying a file folder, probably the draft motion from the lawyer. He saw me awake, sitting up, my eyes clear, and he faltered. Leah, he said. The nurse, there is some mistake. She says I can't see your doctors. There is no mistake, I said. I removed you. Robert stopped at the foot of the bed. He gripped the plastic railing. Why would you do that? We are trying to help you. We are trying to manage this situation. Manage it, I asked. Is that what you call it? Or do you call it fixing it? Like you said in the email. Robert froze. His face went gray. He realized instantly what I was talking about. The forwarded email. The slip of the finger that had revealed the knife behind his back. Leah, he stammered. You misunderstood. That was legal brainstorming. Worst-case scenario planning. You are planning to file for custody tomorrow, I said. You are planning to tell a judge that I'm unfit because I was in a coma for a day. You are planning to take my daughter. It is for your own good, Robert burst out. Look at you. You are broken. You can't take care of a baby. And Evan isn't here. Who knows when he will be here? We are just trying to secure the family. Secure the family, I repeated. Or secure the money. Robert flinched. What are you really afraid of? Dad, I asked. I leaned forward, ignoring the pain in my ribs. Why are you so desperate to have legal control over a baby you refused to hold 2 days ago? Why did you panic when the county got involved? Why is Mom calling the church to hush up a scandal that hasn't even happened yet? You don't understand, Robert whispered. He looked at the door, ensuring it was closed. He wiped sweat from his upper lip. It isn't just about reputation. It's the foundation. Harold's foundation. The trust, Robert hissed. The Nelson Family Giving Trust. The bylaws. You never read them. Leah, you just took the tuition checks and the down payment for your house. You never read the fine print. What fine print? The morality clause, Robert said. He was shaking now. Harold put in a clause 10 years ago. If any primary beneficiary brings public disrepute or scandalous legal entanglement to the family name, the Board of Trustees has the right to audit and suspend all disbursements. All of them. The house, the cars, the pension supplements. I stared at him. The pieces were slamming into place. So the CFS file, I started. The CFS file is a legal entanglement, Robert said, his voice rising in panic. If Harold finds out, if he really pushes this, he can cut us off. He can strip everything. We have leverage. Leah, we have debt. We live a certain way because we count on that distribution. So you need the baby, I said, feeling sick. If you have custody of the baby, you control the narrative. You can tell Harold that CFS was just a formality and that the child is with family. You can bury the file. We need to close the loop, Robert pleaded. If the baby goes to Marisol, the file stays open, the county stays involved, Harold has ammunition. If we take her, the case closes. We are the grandparents. It looks clean. You monster, I whispered. I am your father. No, I said. You are an employee of the Nelson Family Trust. That is all you are. And you are trying to use my daughter as a resume pad to keep your job. You don't understand what is at stake, Robert yelled. Get out, I said. I pointed to the door. Get out before I call security and create the biggest public scene this hospital has ever seen. You want a scandal? I will give you a scandal. Robert looked at me, and he saw that I meant it. He saw that the daughter who used to seek his approval was dead, killed in a car crash on Redwood Parkway. The woman in the bed was someone else entirely. He turned and fled. Marisol returned 10 minutes later. She had a look on her face that I recognized. It was the "I found the body" look. You aren't going to believe this, she said, shutting the door and locking it. Try me, I said. My dad just admitted they are trying to steal the baby to keep their allowance from Grandpa. Well, this matches, Marisol said. I just got a text from Julie. Julie from Barton and Lyle. Yes, your old HR director. I frowned. I had left Barton and Lyle Consulting 2 years ago on good terms. Why is Julie texting you? Because your mother called her, Marisol said. My mother called my old job. This morning, Marisol said. Diane called the HR department. She told them she was acting as your power of attorney, which she isn't, and she needed to verify some historical medical data regarding your maternity leave paperwork. What? She was digging. Leah, Marisol said furiously. She asked if you had ever filed for disability for mental health reasons. She asked if there were any incidents of instability in your employee file. She was trying to find dirt. She was trying to build a case that you have a history of being crazy so they can use it in court tomorrow. I felt the blood drain from my face. I felt cold. Freezing cold. This wasn't just panic. This was predation. My mother had woken up, put on her makeup, and decided to hunt down her own daughter's past to destroy her future. She was actively trying to frame me as mentally unstable while I was lying in a hospital bed recovering from a near-death experience. I couldn't find the word. I feel like I'm being eaten. They are cannibals, Marisol said. They eat their young to stay full. Does Harold know? He suspected, Marisol said. But he needs to know this. This proves malice. This proves it isn't just about the baby. Harold arrived at 4 o'clock. He looked grim. I heard Robert was here, he said, sitting down. He told me about the trust, I said. He told me about the morality clause. He admitted they need custody to hide the CFS file so you don't cut them off. Harold nodded slowly. He didn't look surprised. He looked sad. I created that monster, Harold said softly. I thought money would give them freedom. Instead, it gave them handcuffs. He said you have evidence, I said, that they violated the conditions. I do, Harold said. Years ago, your father made a bad investment, a very bad investment. He used trust money that was designated for charity. It was illegal. Leah, it was embezzlement. Technically, I covered it up. I put the money back. I made him sign that letter, the one in the safe. I told him if he ever put the family in jeopardy again, or if he ever mistreated you, I would reveal the theft. So that's why they are terrified, I realized. If you open that letter, Dad goes to jail. Maybe not jail, Harold said. The statute of limitations is tricky, but he would be ruined. He would be removed from every board, every club, every social circle. He would be a pariah, and for Robert, that is worse than jail. And they think taking the baby fixes it. They think if they have the baby, they are good grandparents, Harold explained. They think it proves they are responsible. They think it forces my hand to keep the secret, because I wouldn't want to ruin the legal guardians of my great-granddaughter. They are using her as a human shield, I said. Yes, Harold said. They are. I want them gone, I said. I want them out of my life. Grandpa, I don't care about the money. I don't care about the house in Cedar Glen. I want them nowhere near my daughter. We will handle it, Harold promised. Evan is close. He just crossed the state line. He is in a North Line semi-truck doing 70 miles an hour. The sun went down, and the waiting became a physical pain. Every time the elevator dinged, my heart hammered against my ribs. I stared at the door. Marisol was pacing. Harold was pretending to read a magazine. But his eyes were fixed on the hallway. At 7:30, the door opened. Evan Price looked like he had been dragged behind the truck. Not ridden in it. His clothes were rumpled, his hair was wild, and his eyes were dark with exhaustion. He was carrying a duffel bag that looked wet. Leah, he breathed. Evan. He dropped the bag and crossed the room in 2 strides. He collapsed into the chair, burying his face in my neck. He smelled of rain and diesel and cold air. I wrapped my good arm around him, feeling the solid, shaking weight of him. I'm here, he sobbed. I'm here. I'm so sorry. You made it, I said, crying into his hair. You're here, he pulled back, his hands cupping my face. He looked at the bruises, the bandages. His thumb traced the cut on my lip. I saw her, he said. I stopped at the NICU. The nurses let me in. Harold called ahead. Is she okay? She's tiny, Evan said, tears streaming down his face into his beard. She's so tiny, and she's perfect. I held her. She grabbed my finger. He took a deep breath. Wiping his eyes with his sleeve, he turned to look at Harold, then Marisol. He nodded to them a silent acknowledgement of the watch they had kept. Then he turned back to me. His expression changed, the sorrow evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard anger that matched my own. Harold told me, Evan said, on the phone. He told me about the refusal. He told me about the email. He told me they are trying to say you're unfit. Yeah, I said. Do you want them near her? Evan asked. It was the question I had been asking myself all day. Did I want to salvage something? Did I want to try to make peace for the sake of appearances? Did I want my daughter to know her grandparents? I thought about the empty car seat. I thought about the social worker calling their names and hearing silence. I thought about Diane calling my HR department to dig up dirt. I thought about Robert worrying about his club membership while I was bleeding internally. No, I said. Okay, Evan said. He stood up. He looked like a man who was ready to tear the building down brick by brick. Then they don't get near her, Evan said. Not ever again. An hour later, Tessa Wynne came in. She looked relieved to see Evan. Mr. Price, she said, I am so glad you made it safe. I am here, Evan said. I am the father. I am taking custody of my daughter. We can process that immediately, Tessa said. But given the complexity of the family situation and the CFS file that is open, we need to do this formally. We have scheduled a discharge planning meeting for tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Who will be there? Evan asked. Everyone, Tessa said. The medical team, CFS, Mr. Pierce, and the grandparents have requested to be present. They can request whatever they want, Evan said. Are they invited? They are the ones challenging the placement, Tessa said gently. If we want to close this file cleanly so they cannot come back in a month and sue you, we need to do it in that room. We need them to look at you and look at the state and be told no on the official record. Fine, I said from the bed. Let them come. I looked at Evan, then at Harold. Let them come, I repeated, and let them bring their lawyer, because I am bringing the truth. The stage was set. The storm outside had passed, leaving the world wet and raw, but the real storm was waiting in Conference Room B, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and I was finally ready to walk into it. Conference Room B smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. It was a windowless box on the administrative floor of Riverside Memorial, a neutral ground designed for difficult conversations. I sat in a wheelchair, my side throbbing with a dull, persistent ache. Evan's hand resting heavily on my shoulder. Across the laminate table sat the people who had raised me, looking like they had just stepped out of a catalog for successful, benevolent grandparents. Diane was wearing a navy blazer and pearl earrings. Robert had on his spectacles and a freshly pressed shirt. They were smiling at the discharge planner, nodding sympathetically at the social worker, and projecting an air of reasonable, upper-middle-class stability that made my stomach turn. We are just so relieved Leah is recovering, Diane said, her voice dripping with performed warmth. She turned to the head nurse, Barb, and touched her arm lightly. And the care here has been exceptional. Robert and I were saying just this morning how grateful we are for the NICU team. You have been angels. I watched her, fascinated by the performance. There was no trace of the woman who had called my HR department to dig up dirt on my mental health. There was no trace of the woman who had stood in my hospital room and refused to look me in the eye. This was Public Diane. Public Diane was unflappable. Public Diane was a saint. Thank you, Mrs. Nelson, the discharge planner said, shuffling papers. We are here to finalize the discharge plan for the infant, since the father, Mr. Price, is now present. The legal custody defaults to him and the mother. However, given the open file with Child and Family Services, we need to formally close out the temporary protective hold. Of course, Robert said, his voice measured and calm. We want whatever is best for the baby. We understand that there were logistical challenges the night of the accident. We are just glad Evan could finally make it back. Logistical challenges. I felt Evan stiffen beside me. His grip on my shoulder tightened. I reached up and covered his hand with mine, signaling him to wait. It wasn't a logistical challenge, Dad, I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a razor. It was a refusal. Robert turned to me, his expression shifting to one of mild, paternal condescension. Leah, honey, you were unconscious. You don't know the chaos of that night. We were all in shock. I have read the report, I said, looking directly at Nolan Pierce. The caseworker nodded slightly. I know exactly what happened. You refused to sign the kinship paperwork because you were worried about liability. You left your granddaughter to the state because you didn't want to risk your credit rating. Diane sighed, a small, tragic sound. We were advised to be cautious. We are not medical professionals. We didn't want to make a mistake. You made a mistake, Evan said. His voice was rough, scraping against the polished veneer of the room. The mistake was thinking I wouldn't find out. Evan, Diane said, smiling at him as if he were a wayward teenager. We understand you are emotional. It has been a long trip, but let's focus on the future. The baby is healthy. We are all here. We are ready to help with the transition home. In fact, Robert and I have cleared our schedule for the next 2 weeks to stay with you and help with the night shifts. The audacity of it took my breath away. They were not just pretending the betrayal hadn't happened. They were rewriting the script to cast themselves as the heroes who would swoop in and save the day. They wanted access. They wanted to be in my house, holding my baby, pretending everything was fine so that the cracks in the Nelson family facade would be plastered over. "No," I said. The room went quiet. "Excuse me?" Diane blinked. "No," I repeated. I sat up straighter in the wheelchair, ignoring the pull of my stitches. "You are not coming to stay with us. You are not helping with night shifts. You are not going to be alone with my daughter." Robert frowned, taking off his glasses. "Leah, be reasonable. You are injured. Evan has to work. You need family support." "I have family support," I said. "I have Evan, I have Marisol, and I have Harold." "Marisol is not family," Diane snapped, the mask slipping for a fraction of a second before she caught it. "She is a friend, a very enthusiastic friend, but she is not blood." "She was there," I said. "She was there when you weren't, and that makes her more family than you are right now." I turned to the social worker and Nolan Pierce. "I want to state my boundaries for the discharge plan. The baby goes home with Evan and me. Marisol King is the designated backup guardian for any medical or legal decisions if we are incapacitated, and Diane and Robert Nelson are to have no unsupervised access to the child. None. Zero." The discharge planner looked uncomfortable. "Ms. Nelson, we typically encourage family reunification." "This is not a negotiation," I said. "I am the mother. I am competent. I am making a parenting decision. They refused her when she was vulnerable. They do not get to claim her now that she is safe. Until trust is rebuilt, and that is going to take a very long time, they are visitors. And they are only visitors when I say they are." Diane looked at Robert. Robert looked at the table. They realized, perhaps for the first time, that the Leah is emotional card was not going to work in this room. The professionals at the table, Nolan. The nurses. The social worker had seen the file. They knew the score. "Very well," Nolan Pierce said, writing in his notebook. "We will document the mother's request. The safety plan will reflect that the grandparents are not primary caregivers." Robert cleared his throat. "We simply want to note for the record," he said, his voice tight, "that we are willing and able to assist. We are being excluded." "Noted," Nolan said without looking up. The meeting ended 5 minutes later. Papers were signed. The temporary hold was lifted. My daughter was legally ours again, as we wheeled out into the hallway. The tension that had been contained in the room spilled over. Diane walked briskly to catch up with my wheelchair. We were near the elevators, a semi-private alcove away from the nurse's station. She stopped in front of me, blocking the path. "I hope you are happy," she hissed. The public Diane was gone. This was the real Diane, the one whose eyes were hard as flint. "I am relieved," I said. "There is a difference." "You humiliated us in there," she said. Her hands were shaking. "You treated us like criminals in front of the hospital staff. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that is to have a social worker looking at us like we are negligent?" "You were negligent," Evan said, stepping between her and the wheelchair. "Stay out of this, Evan," Diane spat. She looked back at me. "We did what we thought was right to protect this family from financial ruin, and you repay us by banning us from our grandchild after everything we have done for you, the tuition, the down payment." "Is that what she costs?" I asked quietly. "The down payment is that the price of admission to hold her, because I don't remember seeing a price tag on her bassinet." Robert followed her, head down, like a dog that had been kicked. We met Harold at the coffee kiosk in the main lobby 20 minutes later. It was a relief to be out of the administrative wing. The lobby was full of normal life people buying balloons, visitors drinking lattes, the hum of the outside world. Evan parked my wheelchair by a small round table. He went to get coffees, leaving me alone with my grandfather. Harold looked tired. He was stirring a packet of sugar into his black tea, watching the crystals dissolve. "Did they sign?" Harold asked. "They didn't have to sign anything," I said, "but they accepted the terms. They know they aren't getting her." Good, Harold said. They need boundaries. They have never had boundaries. Robert told me about the trust, I said. Yesterday, he told me about the morality clause. Harold nodded. I assumed he would. He tries to use it as a shield. He claims he has to be ruthless to protect the family name, because if the name is muddied, the money stops. He said you have proof that they violated it, I said. He said you have a letter. I do. Evan came back with the coffees. He sat down, taking my hand again. What is in the letter? Harold Leah told me you threatened them with it. What could possibly be so bad that they would leave a baby in the NICU to hide it? Harold took a sip of his tea. He looked at Evan, then at me. He seemed to be weighing the cost of the truth. It wasn't just bad investments, Harold said softly. Robert told you he made a mistake with the funds. That is the polite version. The truth is that 7 years ago, your father and mother drained the charitable arm of the Nelson Family Giving Trust. Drained it? I asked. Like, stole it. They funneled nearly $400,000 into a shell company, Harold said. They used it to cover gambling debts. I stared at him. Gambling debts. Dad doesn't gamble. Robert doesn't, Harold corrected. Diane does. The world tilted on its axis. My mother, the woman who chaired the flower committee, the woman who judged my mismatched socks, the woman who was obsessed with propriety. She had a problem, Harold said. Online casinos, high-stakes bridge clubs in the city. It started small, and then it spiraled. Robert found out. But instead of stopping her, he tried to fix it. He tried to cover the losses so no one would know. He panicked. He moved money from the trust money meant for scholarships and food banks and used it to pay off her markers. I felt sick. And you caught them. I caught them, Harold said. I should have gone to the police. I should have reported the embezzlement, but I couldn't. He looked down at his hands. She is my daughter. I didn't want to see her in prison. I didn't want the Nelson name dragged through the mud. So I made a deal. I replaced the money from my personal accounts, and I made them sign a confession. The letter. Evan realized. Yes, the letter details the theft, the cover-up, and the repayment. If I release it, they aren't just broke. They are facing fraud charges. The IRS would be involved. It would be the end of their lives as they know them. So that's why, I whispered. That's why they are so terrified of a scandal. If CFS digs too deep into their finances, or if there is a court case where their assets are audited, the house of cards falls down, Harold finished. They have spent 7 years living in terror that I will change my mind. That fear has rotted them. Leah, it has made them paranoid. It has made them selfish. When the accident happened, they didn't see a tragedy. They saw a spotlight, and they ran from it. I sat back in my wheelchair, the revelation washing over me. It wasn't just that they were cold, it was that they were trapped. Their love for me, their interest in my life, their gifts. It had all been a performance to keep Harold happy, to keep the secret buried. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a liability that needed to be managed. They don't love us, I said, my voice trembling. They just fear you. They love you in their own broken way, Harold said gently. But the fear is stronger. Fear is always stronger with people like them. Evan squeezed my hand until my knuckles cracked. Forget them, he said fiercely. Leah, look at me. Forget them. We don't need their money. We don't need their drama. We have the baby. We are going home. Let them rot in their big house with their secrets. He is right, Harold said. Focus on the recovery. Focus on the little one. I will handle Diane and Robert. I have the leash. We went back up to the room to pack. The discharge was official. We were leaving. I was folding the tiny yellow onesie I had brought for the baby, the one that said new to the crew, when Nolan Pierce knocked on the open door. He did not look happy. I'm sorry to interrupt, Nolan said. He stepped inside and closed the door. But I have to inform you of something that was just filed. Filed? Evan stood up. We just finished the meeting. The case is closed. The protective hold is closed, Nolan clarified. But the file remains open for monitoring, and your mother just called my supervisor. What did she do? I asked. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. She filed a formal statement of concern regarding the discharge, Nolan said. She claimed that you are suffering from severe post-concussion syndrome and are not mentally stable enough to care for an infant. She cited erratic behavior and hostility during the meeting. She is lying, Evan shouted. She is vindictive. I know, Nolan said, raising a hand. I was there. I saw it. But because she framed it as a medical safety concern, I am required to document it, and I am required to ask for a psych consult note from your attending physician before you leave the premises. She is trying to delay us, I realized. She wants to keep us here. She wants to create a record, Nolan said. She wants there to be a paper trail suggesting you are unfit. Just in case she needs it later, it is a strategic move. It won't stop the discharge your doctor has already cleared you, but it adds a layer of complexity. I sank down onto the edge of the bed. It was relentless. Even as she was retreating, she was throwing grenades over her shoulder. She called my HR, I said to Nolan. Marisol told me. She tried to find my old medical records. Now she is filing false reports with CFS. This isn't concern. This is harassment. It feels like harassment, Nolan agreed, but without proof of malicious intent. The system treats it as a concerned grandmother. I have proof, a voice said from the doorway. Marisol walked in. She was holding a spiral-bound notebook. She looked like she hadn't slept in 3 days. But her eyes were bright with adrenaline. What is that? Nolan asked. This, Marisol said, slapping the notebook onto the tray table. Is the receipt? She opened it. The pages were covered in Marisol's neat, cramped handwriting. I started writing things down the minute I walked into the ER, Marisol said. I have timestamps. I have names. Look here. She pointed to a page. Tuesday, 8:45 p.m. Diane Nelson refuses to sign Form 202. States, liability concerns. Nurse Brenda Holt present. Wednesday, 10:15 a.m. Diane Nelson tells Nurse Ratched she is not equipped to change a diaper. Wednesday, 2:30 p.m. Robert Nelson asks me if Leah has changed her life insurance beneficiaries. Thursday, 9 o'clock. a.m. Diane Nelson calls Barton Lyle HR department. Julie creates an incident log of the call. Marisol looked at Nolan. And here's the kicker. At 10 a.m. this morning, right after the meeting, I heard Diane on the phone in the hallway. I wrote it down verbatim. She tapped the last entry. Thursday, 10:05 a.m. Diane on phone. If we file a concern about her head injury, can we delay the discharge until Monday? I need time to talk to the lawyer about the trust. Nolan stared at the notebook. He looked at Marisol with genuine admiration. You wrote that down. I dated it, and I had the janitor sign as a witness that I was standing there. Marisol said, Okay, the janitor part is a lie, but I wrote it down immediately. Nolan picked up the notebook. This changes the context. This shows a pattern of retaliation and financial motivation, not genuine safety concern. I can include copies of these notes in the file to refute her statement. It essentially neuters her complaint. Do it, Evan said. Put it all in there. Thank you. Marisol, I said, tears pricking my eyes. You saved us. I told you, Marisol said, hugging me carefully. I am the sister. She is just the donor. We left the hospital at 2 p.m. The drive home was quiet. Evan drove like the car was made of glass. The baby, my daughter slept in the back seat, oblivious to the war that had been fought over her. When we got to the rental house in Maplehurst, it felt like entering a sanctuary. The paint was peeling slightly on the porch, and the lawn was overgrown. But it was ours. There were no nurses, no social workers, no Diane. We settled in. Evan carried the car seat inside. I sat on the sofa, feeling the exhaustion crash over me like a wave. Harold had followed us in his car. He came in for a moment to check the locks and make sure the heat was working. "I am going home," Harold said, standing by the door. "I am going to have a very long, very unpleasant conversation with your parents." "Grandpa," I said, "why didn't you stop them sooner?" It was the question that had been haunting me. He knew about the gambling. He knew about the theft. He knew they were hollow. Harold leaned on his cane. He looked old, truly old, in the dim light of the hallway. "Because I thought I could buy peace," he admitted. "I thought if I fixed the money, they would fix themselves. I thought if I removed the stress of the debt, they would go back to being the people I raised, but I was wrong." He looked at the baby, sleeping in the swing Evan had set up. "I learned too late that when you shield people from the consequences of their actions, you don't make them safe," Harold said. "You make them weak, and weak people are dangerous, because they will do anything to avoid facing the truth. I made them what they are. Leah. By trying to save them, I ruined them." "You saved me," I said. "That counts." "I hope so," Harold said. "I hope so." He left, and the house settled into silence. That evening, the reality of new motherhood set in, the feeding, the changing, the sheer terror of being responsible for a human life. But it was a good terror. It was a clean terror. It wasn't the muddy, suffocating dread of the hospital. I was sitting in the rocking chair, nursing the baby, when my phone buzzed on the side table. I ignored it at first. I didn't want to let the world in. But it buzzed again, and again. I reached out and picked it up. It was a text from Diane. "Leah, I know you are angry, but we are family. People are going to start asking questions if we aren't seen helping. I am coming tomorrow at 10. We need to talk. Alone. Without Evan. Without Harold." I stared at the screen. She still didn't get it. She thought this was a negotiation. She thought she could come into my house, invoke the sacred name of family, and bully me into silence to protect her reputation. She wanted me alone because alone, I was easier to manipulate. Alone, I was the daughter who sought approval. I looked down at my daughter. Her tiny hand was resting on my chest. She was warm. She was safe. She was mine. I thought about the car crash. I thought about the silence on the other end of the phone when the social worker called. I thought about the concern filed to delay my exit. I typed my reply with one hand. Not alone. Not anymore. I hit send. Then I blocked the number. I put the phone down and looked at Evan, who was asleep on the rug next to the dog, his hand resting near the baby's swing. "We're okay," I whispered to the room. "We're okay." But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Diane and Robert were cornered animals. Harold had threatened their survival. I had cut off their access. And people like them, people who have lived their whole lives behind a mask, do not go quietly into the night. They scream, and when they scream, they try to break everything around them. I just had to make sure my walls were strong enough to hold. The first 3 days at home were a blur of soft light and sharp pain. Our rental house in Maplehurst was small, the kind of post-war bungalow where the floorboards groan when the heat kicks on, but it felt like a fortress. We kept the curtains drawn. We ordered groceries to the doorstep. We existed in a bubble of milk, diapers, and the quiet, terrified awe of keeping a tiny human alive. But beneath the domestic peace, the ground felt unstable. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach clenched. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I knew my parents well enough to know that silence was not a surrender. It was a reloading phase. On the 4th morning, the summons arrived. It wasn't a text this time. It was a courier. A man in a brown uniform knocked on the door and handed Evan a thick envelope. Inside was a formal request for a family mediation session, scheduled for that evening at 7 o'clock at Harold's estate in Cedar Glen. The language was polite, almost corporate, but the subtext was clear: come to the table, or we will find other ways to make you listen. "We don't have to go," Evan said, tossing the letter onto the kitchen counter next to the breast pump parts I was sterilizing. "We can stay right here. We can lock the door. If we don't go, they will come here," I said. I was moving slowly, protecting my healing side, but my mind was racing. Or worse, they will send lawyers, or they will call CFS again with another bogus concern. We have to end this. Evan, we have to look them in the eye and finish it. I am coming, Marisol said from the living room couch. She had practically moved in, sleeping on the sofa to help with the night feedings. And I am bringing my notebook. They asked for a family meeting, I said. Diane specifically said family only in her last text. Good, Marisol said, standing up and smoothing her sweatpants. I am the one who held your hand while they were worrying about their credit score. I am the definition of family. So we went. Cedar Glen Estates is a place where the lawns are manicured to within an inch of their lives and the silence is heavy with judgment. As we drove through the iron gates, I felt the old, familiar weight of my childhood settling onto my shoulders. This was the place where I had learned to be quiet. This was the place where I had learned that appearance mattered more than reality. Harold's house was the largest on the block, a sprawling brick colonial that looked like it belonged in a history book. My parents' car was already in the driveway, parked perfectly parallel to the garage. Evan parked our beat-up sedan behind their luxury SUV. He turned off the engine and looked at me. You are the mother, he said. You hold the cards. Remember that. I know, I whispered, but my hands were shaking. We walked to the door, Evan carrying the car seat, Marisol flanking me like a bodyguard. Harold opened the door before we could knock. He looked tired, leaning heavily on his cane, but his eyes were alert. They are in the library, Harold said. He looked at Marisol and nodded. Good. You brought reinforcements. I wouldn't miss it, Marisol said. We walked down the long hallway, the Persian runners muffling our footsteps. The library was a room of dark wood and leather, smelling of old paper and lemon polish. Diane and Robert were sitting on the velvet sofa. They stood up when we entered. Diane looked impeccable. She was wearing a cream-colored sweater and slacks, her hair perfectly coiffed, but her eyes were red-rimmed. Robert stood beside her, his hands clasped behind his back, looking like a man awaiting a court-martial. Leah, Diane said, taking a step forward. She looked at the car seat. And the baby. You brought her. She goes where I go, I said. I sat in the high-backed armchair opposite them. Evan placed the car seat at my feet and stood behind me, his hand resting on the back of the chair. Marisol sat on the ottoman to my left, notebook in hand. Thank you for coming, Robert said. His voice was stiff. We felt it was necessary to clear the air before things escalated any further. You escalated it, Evan said. You filed a report against Leah. We filed a concern, Diane corrected quickly, because we were worried. Leah, look at you. You are pale. You are injured. We just wanted to make sure you weren't taking on too much too soon. Cut the crap, Mom, I said. The vulgarity hung in the elegant room like a bad smell. Diane flinched. I am not here for the performance, I said. I am not here for the Concerned Grandparents Act. I am here because you refused to pick up your granddaughter when I was bleeding out on a stretcher. Start there. Diane looked at Robert, then back at me. She sat down slowly, clasping her hands in her lap. I panicked, she said. Her voice wavered. Leah, you have to understand. It was the middle of the night. We got the call. We were terrified you were going to die. And then this woman, this social worker, was shoving papers in our faces, talking about legal guardianship and liability. I froze. I didn't know what to do. That is a lie, I said. It is the truth, Diane cried. I was overwhelmed. No, I said. I know you. You are the most decisive person I know. You organize charity galas for 500 people. You manage the church budget. You don't freeze. You calculate. I leaned forward, the pain in my ribs a sharp reminder of why I was there. You knew exactly what to do, I said softly. You knew that baby needed a safe place to go. You knew I couldn't help her, but you looked at the situation, and you saw a risk. You saw a mess, and you decided you didn't want the mess on your carpet. You didn't panic. Mom, you chose. It wasn't just about the mess, Robert interjected. He walked over to the fireplace, avoiding my eyes. It was about the implications, Harold's trust. The stipulations are very specific about legal entanglements. Here we go, Marisol muttered, opening her notebook. What does the trust have to do with holding a baby? Evan asked. Everything. Robert turned. His face flushed. You don't understand the pressure we are under. Harold holds that money over our heads like a guillotine. If we make one mistake, one public mistake, he cuts us off. We thought, if we signed the papers, and there was a medical issue, or a lawsuit from the other driver involved in the crash, it would expose the family finances to an audit. We were trying to protect the assets. For you, Leah, ideally. This money goes to you one day. I stared at him. The room felt suddenly very cold. You used my daughter as a shield for your bank account, I said. You let her go to the state because you were afraid of an audit. We were protecting the legacy, Robert insisted. Family responsibility isn't just about hugs and kisses. It is about ensuring the future is funded. We made a hard choice. You made a selfish choice, Harold said. He had been standing in the corner, silent until now. He walked into the center of the room, the thump of his cane silencing Robert. And you are right about one thing, Robert, Harold said. The trust is the problem. Harold reached into his jacket pocket. He didn't pull out the letter this time. He pulled out a fresh document, stapled and blue-backed. I spent the morning with my attorneys, Harold said, and I have made some changes to the Nelson Family Giving Trust. Diane went pale. Dad, what did you do? I restructured the beneficiary designation, Harold said calmly. Effective immediately. The primary beneficiary of the trust is no longer Robert Nelson or Diane Nelson. It is the child. He pointed to the car seat at my feet. My great-granddaughter, Harold said. She is now the principal heir. The funds are placed in a protected vehicle for her education, her health, and her future. You can't do that, Robert whispered. We have expenses. We have the mortgage on this house. We have the club dues. You have a stipend, Harold said. A very modest stipend, enough to keep the lights on, but not enough to fund your lifestyle. Unless what? Diane asked, her voice trembling. Unless you earn your way back, Harold said. I have added a clause, the accountability clause. You are removed from all control of the assets. You have no access to the capital. The only way you receive anything beyond the basic stipend is if Leah and only Leah signs a quarterly affidavit stating that you have been supportive. Present and humble grandparents. The silence that followed was absolute. Harold had just handed me the keys to their kingdom. He had turned the tables so completely that I felt dizzy. You gave her the power, Diane whispered. She looked at me with a mixture of horror and awe. You gave her the money. I gave her the control, Harold corrected, because she is the only one in this room who knows what family actually means. Robert sank onto the sofa. He looked defeated. This is humiliation. You are making us beg our own daughter for our allowance. I am making you act like parents, Harold said. If you want the lifestyle, you have to do the work. No more hiding, no more performing. You show up, you help, you apologize, or you starve. Diane began to cry. But it wasn't the polite, pretty crying she usually did. It was ugly. Her face crumpled. She put her hands over her face and sobbed, her shoulders shaking. It isn't fair, she choked out. Life isn't fair, I said. Neither is a car accident. No, Diane said, looking up. Her mascara was running. You don't understand. It isn't just the money. It's me. You didn't need me, Diane said. The words came out like they were being torn out of her throat. For 30 years, I was the mother. I told you what to wear. I told you where to go to school. I was the center of the orbit. And then, you met Evan. You got that job. You bought that house without asking for a dime. You had the baby. She took a shuddering breath. I looked at you, Leah, and I saw that you had built a whole world where I was irrelevant. You didn't need my approval. You didn't need my advice. And when the accident happened and they called me, she paused, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. It was the most ungraceful thing I had ever seen her do. I felt like if I stepped in, if I took the baby, I would fail, she admitted. I felt like I wasn't the mother anymore. I was just the grandmother, the backup, and I was angry at you for replacing me. I was angry that you were happy without me. So when the social worker asked me to help, I wanted to punish you. I wanted you to need me again. I wanted you to break, so I could be the one to fix you. The room was silent. Even Marisol had stopped writing. It was a monstrous admission. It was cruel. But it was the first honest sentence my mother had spoken to me in a decade. She hadn't refused the baby because of liability. She had refused the baby because her ego was bruised by my independence. She had used my tragedy to try to regain her relevance. That is sick, Diane, Evan said quietly. I know, Diane whispered. I know it is, but it is the truth. I looked at her. I didn't feel forgiveness. That was too big a word, too far away. But I felt a strange release. The mystery was gone. My mother wasn't a villain from a movie. She was just a sad, insecure woman who had let her vanity eat her heart. And you? Robert, Harold asked. Was it jealousy for you too? Robert looked up. He looked at Diane, then at me. He shook his head. No, Robert said. It was fear, real fear. He took a deep breath. There is an audit coming. What? Harold asked sharply. Not from you. Dad, Robert said. From the IRS. I got the notice 2 weeks ago. They are looking into the shell company, the one we used to pay off Diane's debt 7 years ago. Harold stiffened. I thought you closed that. I did, Robert said. But I didn't close it clean. There were lingering transfers. If they dig, they will find the link to the trust. They will find the embezzlement. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. When the accident happened, Robert said, I saw a window. I thought if I could delay everything, delay the custody, delay the legal filings, create a distraction with the CFS case, I could buy myself 2 weeks to move the files, to hide the paper trail before the auditors got too deep. I needed chaos. Leah, I needed you to be a crisis so no one would look at me. I felt sick. You wanted me to stay in the hospital. I wanted the world to look at the car crash, Robert admitted, so they wouldn't look at the bank account. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but I forced them to hold me. So that's it, I said. Jealousy and greed, that is the foundation of this family. That was the foundation, Harold corrected. It ends today. Robert looked at the blue-backed document in Harold's hand. So we are ruined. That depends, Evan said. Evan stepped forward. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He had written it that morning, sitting at our kitchen table while I nursed the baby. This is not a legal document, Evan said. Not yet, but it will be. He placed the paper on the coffee table in front of my parents. This is a family agreement, Evan said. It outlines the terms of your relationship with our daughter, if you want to avoid Harold cutting you off completely, and if you want to avoid me getting a restraining order, you will sign this. Robert picked it up. His hands were trembling. Read it, Evan commanded. Robert read aloud, his voice cracking. Point 1, Diane and Robert Nelson agree to a 6-month probation period where all visits with the grandchild are supervised by Leah Nelson or Evan Price. No exceptions. He swallowed. Point 2. The grandparents will have zero involvement in any financial decisions regarding the child. No trust funds, no savings accounts, no gifts over the value of $50 without express written permission. Point 3, Robert read, and he stopped. He looked at Diane. Read it, I said. Point 3. Diane and Robert Nelson will attend weekly family therapy sessions with a provider of Leah's choosing. If they miss a session, visitation is suspended for 1 month. Robert lowered the paper. Therapy, We don't, we don't do therapy. You do now, I said. You admitted you are jealous, vindictive, and criminally liable. You are sick, Dad, both of you, and I am not letting sick people around my daughter unless they are taking their medicine. And the IRS, Robert asked, looking at Harold. I will handle the IRS, Harold said grimly. I have lawyers who can clean up your mess one last time. But it will cost you. I am taking the cost out of your stipend. You are going to live on a budget. Robert, you are going to learn what it means to clip coupons. And if we refuse? Diane asked. Then I open the letter, Harold said, and I let the auditors find what they find, and you go to prison. Diane looked at the room. She looked at the luxury she had spent her life cultivating: the books, the rugs, the paintings. Then she looked at the baby in the car seat. And finally, she looked at me. She saw that I wasn't the little girl she could bully anymore. I was the one holding the keys. Where do we sign? Diane whispered. Evan handed her a pen. She signed the paper. Then she handed it to Robert. He hesitated for a second, looking at Harold, looking for a way out. But there was no way out. The walls he had built were closing in. He signed. Evan took the paper back. He folded it and put it in his pocket. One strike, Evan said. You miss one appointment. You make one passive-aggressive comment about our parenting. You try to manipulate us with money one time. And you are done. Forever. We understand, Robert said. He sounded smaller than I had ever heard him. I looked at them. They looked deflated. The monsters under my bed had turned out to be just two scared, selfish people in expensive clothes. We are leaving now, I said. I am tired, and my daughter needs to eat. I picked up the car seat. The weight of it was grounding. Leah, Diane said as I turned to go. Will we see you on Sunday for dinner? I stopped. I looked back at her. She looked desperate. She wanted the routine back. She wanted to pretend this meeting hadn't happened. No, I said. You won't see us Sunday. But the agreement. The agreement says we supervise visits, I said. It doesn't say when those visits happen. We will call you when we are ready, maybe next week, maybe next month. Don't call us. I walked toward the door. Marisol opened it for me. Evan followed. Harold walked us to the car. The night air was crisp and cold, smelling of rain and pine needles. You did good, little bird, Harold said, leaning on my window as I buckled the baby in. I paused, searching for the word. I feel sad. Grandpa, I thought winning would feel better than this. This isn't winning, Harold said gently. This is just survival. Winning comes later. Winning comes when that little girl in the back seat grows up knowing she is loved for who she is, not what she is worth. Do you think they can change? I asked. Do you think the therapy will work? Harold looked back at the house, where the lights were burning in the library. I don't know, he admitted. They are old trees. Leah, it is hard to bend them without breaking them. But for the first time in their lives, they have a reason to try. They have lost the only thing they really cared about: their control. He reached in and touched my cheek. But remember this, Harold said, his voice low and fierce. They don't get to become good grandparents to erase being poor parents. They don't get a blank slate. They only get what you choose to give. You are the gatekeeper now. I know, I said. Go home. Harold said, Go live your life. You have earned it. We drove out of Cedar Glen Estates in silence. I watched the big iron gates close in the rearview mirror. I watched the manicured lawns and the silent houses fade into the darkness. When we crossed the city limit line into Maplehurst, I rolled down the window. The air smelled like exhaust and wet pavement and life. It smelled real. Are you okay? Evan asked, reaching over to take my hand. Yeah, I said. I looked at Marisol in the back seat, who was already asleep, her notebook clutched to her chest. I looked at my daughter, who was staring up at the streetlights flashing by. I'm okay, I said. We're free. And for the first time in my life, I believed it. Thank you so much for listening to My Parents Refused My Newborn. During my car accident. This story was a journey through betrayal, justice, and the complex reality of breaking generational cycles. I hope it resonated with you. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please leave a comment below and tell me which country or city you call home. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories. We have many more tales of drama, family secrets, and hard-won justice coming your way. And please, share your thoughts on Leah's decision in the comments. Did she make the right choice by giving her parents a path back? Or should she have cut them off completely? I want to hear what you think in English. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And remember, you are the gatekeeper of your own peace.